Have you ever had someone who knew your past a little too well and always seemed to bring it up at the worst possible time? Someone who laughed while doing it, so if you got hurt, it looked like you were the problem. They don't always come as enemies. They don't always come as friends. Sometimes they come as sisters. And this was the case with Venus and Viana. They were twin sisters, beautiful in a way that made people look twice, raised together, side by side, sharing secrets in almost every moment of their lives. Viana was the effortless one. She didn't need extra lengths of hair to feel beautiful. Her natural brown hair was rich, full, and well cared for, and she loved it that way. She didn't overdress. She didn't overdo her makeup. She didn't feel the need to wear heels to every outing or carry designer bags just to be noticed. Viana never tried to be seen. Somehow, she just was. She was the twin people trusted. Their mother called her the responsible one, the calm one, the one who made better decisions. When something needed to be handled, people naturally looked to Viana. When Viana was in charge, everyone relaxed because they knew things would be handled with care. But Viana wasn't always like this. There was a time when she was the wild twin, the one who stayed out late, the one who came home tipsy, the one you'd see at every party, every gathering, never missing anything that felt like fun. If there was a party, people made sure Viana was invited. And somehow, she always came home with one shoe. Whenever Viana stepped out of the house, everyone knew she'd return missing the other shoe. She lived loudly, freely, without much thought for tomorrow. She was the girl who lit up quiet rooms, the one who turned ordinary nights into memories. People didn't just like Viana, they followed her energy, and attention never seemed to miss her. But somewhere along the way, Viana grew out of it. Not because she wanted to prove a point, not because anyone told her to change. She simply lost interest. Then there was Venus. Venus had always been the flashy twin. She loved luxury. She loved the bigger things, the finer things. Venus, too, had full, rich brown hair, but it was never enough on its own. She loved it longer, fuller, flowing down her back. Venus liked to be seen, loved bold lipsticks and dresses that made people stare twice. When it came to men, Venus didn't hide what she wanted. She wanted a certain life, and she expected the people around her to match it. Venus loved compliments, loved being approached, loved being talked about. She loved walking into a room and feeling the shift, eyes turning, voices lowering, attention following. She could spend hours getting ready, even if she had nowhere to go, just to feel admired. And if you ever saw the twins together, you didn't need to ask which one was Venus. The heels would tell you. The bag would tell you. The hair. Venus never struggled when it came to men. Attention came easily to her. Gifts, dates, promises. But what Venus struggled with was choosing. She didn't want one. She wanted all of them. And she didn't want to lose a single thing. So she came up with a solution. A secret the twins shared. A game they started when they were younger. Most of the men never knew Venus had a twin. So when dates clashed, Venus would turn to Viana. She'd dress her like herself, the same hair, the same lipstick, the same dresses, and send her in her place. Viana didn't mind. Back then, she loved the thrill, the experience, the story to laugh about later. She'd go on the date, charm them, laugh, come home with gifts, and the sisters would sit together, unwrapping everything, talking about the men, rating the conversations, sharing it all. They never got caught. Not once. And for a long time, it felt harmless, like twin magic. Twin magic didn't start with dates. It had been happening long before that, even back in school. Boys noticed her. She was asked out often, and once they did, she never really said no. Every invitation felt like an opportunity, a new experience, a new restaurant, a new gift. The problem was, life didn't always cooperate. Sometimes a date fell on the same day as a test. That's where twin magic came in. A quiet conversation, a shared look, perfect timing. Viana would slip into Venus's seat, write the test, answer the questions, and no one ever suspected a thing. Not the teachers, not the students. At the time, it felt harmless. To Viana, it was exciting. It felt risky, like getting away with something. She loved the thrill of it. To Venus, it meant she didn't have to miss anything. She could have everything and never give anything up. When the twins went out together, it was always the same pattern. Viana never had to look for the party. The party always found her. She was loud, not careless loud, but alive loud. The kind of loud that pulled people in. Within minutes, strangers wanted to dance with her, someone wanted a picture, someone else wanted her Instagram, someone leaned in and said, "You're fun. There's another party tomorrow. You should come." It wasn't just men. Women wanted to be around her too. They laughed with her. They clung to her energy. Viana made friends everywhere she went. Venus, on the other hand, stayed composed. She sat at the corner of the room, legs crossed, sipping the most expensive champagne on the menu. Her dress was flawless, her makeup untouched. She didn't chase attention. She waited for it, the kind that came dressed in promises, money, and intention. And yes, she got approached, she always did. But whenever there was a group laughing too loudly, dancing too freely, taking pictures like the night might never end, Viana was always in the middle of it. On the way home, Venus would sigh. "Ah, you're so loud. Do you ever get tired of being so noisy? Can't you be a little more classy?" Sometimes she laughed when she said it. Sometimes she didn't. "You smell like alcohol. You need a shower." Viana only laughed. "You should try it sometime," she'd say. For years, from their teenage days into young adulthood, everyone seemed to know the twins by their roles. Venus was the composed one, the clean one, the classy twin. Viana was the party girl, the one who laughed too hard and stayed out too late. And Venus liked that. She liked that people saw her as the calm contrast, the responsible one. It made her feel better. She told herself she was simply different, that she could never be that loud, never be that careless. And Viana never questioned it. To her, life was fun. People laughed with her. People felt comfortable around her. Even back in school, it was always the same. Girls would pull chairs closer to Viana at lunch. They'd tell her stories, invite her out, want her around. Not because she tried, but because she made people feel seen. And sometimes Venus would comment, "Look at the kind of friends you make. They're so loud, so noisy." She said it casually, almost dismissively, as if she wasn't bothered. Venus called it embarrassment, but embarrassment doesn't feel that personal. Back then, when the twins used to go out together, Venus would never get dressed first, ever. She would walk into Viana's room while Viana was still getting ready, sometimes while she was brushing her hair, sometimes while she was standing in front of the mirror half ready, unbothered, and she would ask the same question every time. "What are you wearing?" Viana would answer easily, "A dress." Venus would always respond the same way, "Let me see." She would frame it as help. "You know I'm more fashionable. I just want to be sure it suits you." So Viana would show her. Viana never overthought her outfits. She dressed well, but effortlessly. She didn't take hours choosing shoes. She didn't stress over matching bags. She just got ready. And somehow it always worked. Venus was the opposite. She wouldn't start until she knew. She wouldn't risk guessing. She wouldn't leave anything to chance. Because once she knew what Viana was wearing, she could adjust. She could choose something slightly louder, slightly more polished, slightly more intentional. And then they would step out together. Viana never thought much of it. To her, it was harmless, normal, just something her sister did. As they grew older, something about Viana began to shift quietly. She didn't stop going out. She didn't stop laughing. She didn't suddenly become serious or withdrawn. She was still the girl people loved to be around. She laughed freely, the kind of laugh that made other people laugh too. She never pretended a joke wasn't funny just to look composed, but now she knew when to leave. She didn't stay out until she couldn't find her shoes anymore. She didn't let the night take more than she wanted to give. It wasn't a decision she announced. It wasn't something she planned. It just happened. And even then, people didn't drift away from her. If anything, they leaned in. Friends still invited her out. People still asked for her presence. Some nights, when she chose not to go, others chose not to go too. Viana was never lonely. Even when her sister had a date to attend, Viana had people stopping by, calling her, wanting her around. She had simply become more selective, and somehow that made her even more magnetic. Viana already had company that evening. Her room was warm with laughter, friends sprawled across her bed, music low, conversations overlapping. That was when Venus appeared at the door. "Can I see you for a second?" Viana excused herself without thinking. They stepped into the hallway. Venus spoke casually, almost excited. "So, we have a date tonight." Viana frowned. "We?" Venus waved it off. "There's a guy I've been talking to. He made plans with me. But I also have plans with Carl. And I think Carl might ask me out." The words stacked on each other. Viana listened, but something in her tightened. The explanation felt messy. "So," Viana said slowly, "what do you want me to do?" Venus smiled, the way she always did. "I want you to fill in for me. Just dinner." Viana glanced back toward her room. "I have people over." "Tell them to leave," Venus said quickly. Viana shook her head. "I'm not sending my friends away." Venus's tone shifted. "But you have a date." "No," Viana replied. "You have a date." Venus stared at her. "So how am I supposed to be in two places at once?" Viana exhaled. "You don't have to be. Cancel one or postpone the other." Venus frowned. "I can't. He's traveling." Viana met her eyes. "Then figure it out. You're an adult." Venus didn't understand. On any other day, this would have been easy. She would have laughed. She would have gone. But tonight? She turned back toward her room. "I need to get back to my friends." And she left. Venus stood in the hallway long after, confused, because for the first time, the answer wasn't automatic. Venus came back late that night. She didn't knock. She walked straight into Viana's room, hands on her waist. What was that about? Viana looked up from her bed. "What was what?" Venus scoffed. "You ditched me for your little friends." Viana blinked. "Ditched you over what?" Venus stared at her, clearly irritated now. "You were supposed to fill in for me." Viana sat up. "When did we agree on that?" A pause. Venus waved her hand. "We've always done this." Viana frowned. "We've done it before. That doesn't make it a rule." Venus's tone sharpened. "So what? Now you're too grown? Too mature?" "We're not teenagers anymore," Viana said. Silence. "So that's it? You're done showing up for me?" Viana didn't raise her voice. "I'm done pretending it's my responsibility." Venus straightened. "Fine." She turned toward the door. "If that's how you want it." And she walked out. The door closed softly. For the next few days, Venus barely spoke to her. She acted like Viana wasn't there. In the mornings, she walked through the living room, past the dining table, into the kitchen, made breakfast, and went back to her room without saying a word. She closed her door. Viana didn't chase it. She knew her sister. This wasn't new. Or so she thought. That afternoon, Viana got ready to head out. Nothing dramatic. Light makeup, clean skin, her natural hair brushed back. She looked like herself. As she reached the door, Venus appeared at the top of the stairs. Viana smiled. "I'm heading out. I'll be back soon." Venus looked her up and down, then said sarcastically, "I hope you don't lose your shoe this time." Viana paused. "What do you mean by that?" Venus shrugged. "Nothing," then added, "You should probably wear more makeup," and walked upstairs. Viana stood there for a moment. Something had shifted. Still, she grabbed her bag and stepped outside. She didn't know yet that this day, of all days, would be the one where she met him. That evening, Viana went out with her friends. Nothing loud, nothing reckless. Just laughter, drinks, pictures, and the kind of conversations that didn't need shouting. At some point, one of her friends leaned in. "There's a guy over there," she whispered. "He's been looking at you all night." Viana glanced over. He looked away. She shrugged. "Guys stare," she said lightly. It wasn't arrogance. It just wasn't new. She went back to her drink, back to her friends, back to laughing. When they finally decided to leave, coats on, bags in hand, someone stepped forward. "Hey," he said calmly. Not loud, not rushed. "Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt earlier." He smiled. "I just wanted to say you seem easy to be around." Viana paused. "I'm Michael," he added. "If you're comfortable, I'd love to talk again sometime. Would it be okay if I got your number?" Viana got back later that evening, long after her friends had gone home. The house was quiet. She walked down the hallway and stopped in front of her sister's door. Knocked once. No response. She knocked again, softer this time, then pushed the door open. Venus was on her bed, phone in hand, scrolling. She didn't look up, not even for a second. Viana leaned against the doorframe. "Are you still mad at me?" Silence. Viana sighed and stepped inside, sitting at the edge of the bed like this was just another disagreement that would pass. "I met someone today." That made Venus pause, just slightly. Her thumb hovered, then continued scrolling. "A guy," Viana said, almost casually. "His name is Michael." That time, Venus looked up. "A guy," she repeated slowly. "Yeah," Viana said. "We exchanged contacts. He said he wants to talk." Venus tilted her head, unimpressed. "Michael?" she scoffed. "I dated 2 Michaels in the past. Both of them were cheats." Viana frowned. "Oh." There was a short pause. Then Venus shrugged. "But anyway, tell me about him." "I don't really know much yet," Viana said honestly. "We just talked a bit. He seemed nice." "Good for you," Venus said flatly. She went back to her phone. Viana hesitated. "How was your day?" Venus didn't look up. "I'm busy, as you can see." That was it. Viana stood there for a moment, waiting for something. A smile, a joke, anything that felt familiar. Nothing came. She quietly closed the door behind her and walked back to her room, confused, brushing it off as another one of Venus's moods. She didn't know then that this wasn't about the date, and it wasn't about that night. It was about the fact that, for the first time, Viana had said no, and something had shifted. Viana and Michael didn't call it a date. They just met. No pressure, no expectations, no rehearsed version of herself. And almost immediately, Michael understood why people felt drawn to her. She was easy to talk to, not in a shallow way, but in the kind of way that made you forget you were trying to impress anyone at all. She laughed freely, reacted honestly, asked questions, and actually listened to the answers. She didn't soften herself. She didn't polish her personality. She didn't perform. She was just present. If something was funny, she laughed. Not a quiet, controlled laugh, not the kind meant to look put together, but the kind that came from her chest. If something surprised her, it showed on her face. If she liked something, she said it. And Michael loved that. He was the same way. Handsome, yes, but not leaning on it. Charming, but not trying to win her over. He didn't talk at her, he talked with her. No grand gestures, no unnecessary bravado. They complemented each other naturally, like it wasn't a strategy, just an observation. Somewhere in the middle of the conversation, Viana mentioned it casually. I have a twin sister. Michael blinked. Really? An identical twin? She smiled. People say we do look alike. That's interesting, he said, genuinely intrigued. I'd love to meet her someday. Yeah, Viana replied easily. Maybe one day we could all hang out. It didn't sound like a plan, just a possibility. After that, they kept seeing each other, slowly. Sometimes it was coffee, sometimes it was a walk, sometimes a movie, and sometimes nothing at all. They would sit together for hours, talking about everything and nothing, losing track of time without even realizing it. No rush, no constant checking of phones, no pressure to turn every moment into something impressive. Michael noticed it first. How light he felt after being around her. How conversations didn't drain him, they grounded him. How silence didn't feel awkward with her. He didn't fall suddenly. He fell quietly. Viana liked him. She liked his company, his calm, the way being around him felt easy. But Michael was already somewhere deeper, and Viana didn't see it yet. At first, Venus never seemed available whenever Michael came up. Every time Viana mentioned wanting the three of them to hang out, there was always something. A date, a plan, somewhere to be, somewhere to go. Viana didn't push it. She just mentioned it again another time, and then another. Until one day, there were no excuses left. The day finally came. Viana was excited, not because she needed approval, but because that's who she was. She liked the people she cared about to meet each other. She liked shared spaces, shared moments. Venus, on the other hand, was unusually quiet. No questions, no teasing, no excitement. She moved around the room calmly, watching. Then, casually, like she always did, she asked, "What are you wearing?" Viana didn't think much of it. "Nothing special," she said, "just a casual dress." That was all Venus needed to hear. Only then did she turn to her wardrobe. By the time she stepped out, she looked immaculate. Heels, perfect makeup, her most expensive bag, hair styled flawlessly. You would have thought she was the one going on the date. Viana, comfortable with Michael by now, hadn't overthought her outfit. She looked beautiful, effortlessly so, without trying to compete. Venus glanced at her and smiled. One of those smiles that sounded like a compliment. "I really wish I had your kind of confidence," she said lightly. Viana smiled back, unaware of what had just passed between them. When Michael finally met Venus, the resemblance was undeniable. He said it out loud, that they really were identical, that people hadn't exaggerated. Venus smiled, glanced at her sister briefly, then shrugged. "I don't see it," she said lightly. "I don't think we look alike at all." It wasn't playful. It wasn't curious. It was dismissive. Viana didn't catch it. Michael didn't press it. They took their seats. Venus sat with practiced elegance, legs crossed, posture perfect, phone resting neatly in her hand. She ordered wine. She took pictures. She looked expensive. Michael looked presentable too. Not performative, not trying to impress, just himself. Viana, as always, looked effortlessly beautiful. And no matter how much Michael tried to include Venus in the conversation, his eyes kept drifting back to Viana. Not deliberately, not rudely, just naturally. He listened when she spoke, smiled when she laughed, sometimes stared a little too long, the kind of smile that forms before you even realize it's there. Venus noticed. None of the men she'd ever dated had looked at her like that. She stayed on her phone more after that. Whenever Michael said something mildly amusing, Viana reacted freely, laughing, leaning forward, engaged, and every time she did, Venus flinched. "That laugh is really loud," she said once, without looking up. "Women don't laugh like that. It's not very classy." Viana laughed it off. Michael didn't. He felt it. The shift in the air, the sharpness underneath the words. He wasn't stupid. He could tell something was wrong. Later, when the conversation drifted again, Venus smiled suddenly. "I'm actually proud of you," she said, lifting her glass. "You're really mindful about drinking now." Viana looked up, confused. "I mean," Venus continued lightly, laughing, "I remember when you used to drink so much you'd throw up on me. You were a wild one." The table went quiet. Viana felt the embarrassment creep in, subtle, unwanted. Michael watched closely. This wasn't teasing. This wasn't care. This was something else. "I used to clean up after you, you know," Venus added casually, swirling her drink. "Almost every time." She smiled. "When you'd come home late and Mom asked questions, I was always the one covering for you." A pause, only for you to walk in with one shoe. She laughed softly, like it was a fond memory. "But look at you now." She turned to Michael. "She's really grown. I'm actually very proud of her." Michael didn't say anything. Not when Venus laughed, not when she framed old stories like jokes, not when she called it growth with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But he noticed. He noticed how Viana's laughter softened, how she stopped leaning forward, how she tucked herself in, not physically, but emotionally. He noticed the pauses, the way her eyes flicked away each time her sister spoke, the way she redirected the conversation, gently, like she didn't want anyone to linger there too long. Michael smiled when it was expected of him. He nodded. He stayed polite. But something had shifted, not because of Viana's past, but because of how someone who claimed to love her kept reaching for it. And in that moment, Michael understood something quietly. This wasn't concern. This was control. The dinner ended without drama. They paid, they stood, they hugged. Venus excused herself first, already scrolling through her phone, already somewhere else. Viana smiled, thanked Michael for the evening, apologized, unnecessarily, for the awkwardness. Michael shook his head gently. "You don't need to apologize. I had a really good time." And he meant it. Viana went home and went straight to her room. She didn't replay the night angrily. She didn't cry. She didn't knock on her sister's door. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling longer than usual. Not hurt, just unsettled. Because something that had always felt normal suddenly didn't. Her phone buzzed. Michael. "Hey," he said softly. "I just wanted to check on you. You went quiet earlier." Viana smiled faintly, even though he couldn't see it. "I'm okay," she said. "Really, I am." There was a pause. "You don't have to explain anything," Michael replied. "I just wanted you to know I see you." That was all. No interrogation, no fixing, no pressure. And for the first time that night, Viana felt at ease again. Days after, Michael visited. He was already seated in the living room when the front door opened. Venus walked in slowly, heels clicking against the floor. She paused when she saw him. "Oh," she said lightly, smiling. "Michael, you're at our house? Wow, you must be special." Viana smiled from the kitchen. "He came by for a bit." Venus hummed. "My sister has always been very comfortable staying out late. I never really ask with who," she said casually. "But for her to bring you here, she must really like you." Viana stiffened. Michael smiled politely. "Thanks. You look really good." Venus' smile widened. "Oh, thank you. I always do." She leaned against the counter, watching him for a moment, then laughed softly. "I'm not very good at jokes," she said, "but I should probably warn you." She glanced at Viana. "When you're on a date with my sister, you should really pay attention. It might not be her you're with." Michael frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Venus waved her hand. "So we used to do this thing we called twin magic. You'd think you were on a date with me, but she'd go instead." She shrugged. "I'm just saying." Vienna stepped forward. That was years ago. Venus tilted her head. People don't really change. She smiled again and poked her sister. And you used to love it back then, remember? You'd come home with the gifts and everything. The room went quiet. Michael looked at Vienna, then back at Venus. He didn't say anything. Venus picked up her phone. Anyway, she said, already walking upstairs, enjoy your night. Her footsteps faded. Vienna stood still, her jaw tight. Michael stood up gently and moved closer to her. It's okay, he said quietly. Vienna didn't answer. She just nodded, but the mood had shifted. Something had finally cracked. After that night, something in Vienna changed. Not suddenly, just steadily. She stopped talking. Not in a dramatic way, she just stopped offering herself. She stopped oversharing, stopped filling silences, stopped explaining herself. For the first time, she didn't see her sister's comments as careless jokes or harmless digs. She saw them for what they were, intentional. Venus never came to her room to apologize, never asked if she was okay, never acknowledged how uncomfortable that night had been. Instead, the house filled with sounds, heels clicking down the hallway, doors opening and closing, perfume lingering after Venus left for another night out. Vienna noticed everything and said nothing. She stayed in her room more. Sometimes she came out early in the morning to grab breakfast, hoping not to run into anyone. Sometimes she waited until she heard the front door close before stepping into the kitchen. The silence between them stretched, and for the first time, Vienna didn't rush to fix it. She didn't even feel angry, just tired. Tired of explaining herself, tired of laughing things off, tired of pretending she didn't notice patterns that had always been there. Michael kept calling, texting, checking in. She saw the messages light up her phone and didn't open them. Not because she didn't care, not because she was upset with him, but because she was embarrassed. Not of her past. She had never been ashamed of it. Those years had shaped her. They weren't secrets. What hurt was how they were presented. Twisted into jokes, dropped casually, served without context by someone she trusted. That made everything feel exposed in the ugliest way. She didn't want to explain herself to Michael yet, didn't want to sit across from him wondering what version of her he was picturing. So she withdrew. She stayed home more, went out less, let calls ring out. Michael didn't push. He didn't show up unannounced, didn't try to corner her, didn't involve anyone else. He didn't even know her friends well enough to reach out through them. He just stayed present from afar. They met somewhere quiet, not somewhere romantic, not somewhere loud, just somewhere calm. Vienna walked in looking exactly like herself, effortlessly beautiful, a soft dress that moved when she walked, dainty jewelry, natural makeup that didn't change her face, only framed it. Her hair brushed smooth, falling in gentle waves, glowing under the light. Michael was already there when she arrived. When he looked up and saw her, he smiled. Not intentionally, not politely, just automatically. He stood up, just naturally, like it was instinct. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied. They sat. There was a pause. "Would you like anything?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said. They both spoke at the same time, then stopped. "Let me talk first," Vienna said quietly. Michael nodded. "Okay." She took a breath, a deep one. "I'm not here to blame my sister," she began. "I'm not here to blame anyone." She paused. "I take responsibility for everything I did." Michael listened. "When we were younger, it felt fun. The switching, the dates, the gifts. Nobody ever found out. We laughed about it." She exhaled. "It became a thing." Michael smiled faintly. "You know," he said gently, The first time your sister mentioned twin magic, I genuinely thought you two had actual powers." Viana laughed despite herself. "Michael, I'm trying to be serious." "I know," he said. "Go on." She did. "As for the late nights," she gestured lightly. "That's why I own so many shoes without pairs. I lost them. A lot." Michael didn't look shocked or disappointed. He looked amused. "So," he said, "after this, I'm taking you home myself, so we don't lose any more shoes." She laughed. He did too. Then her voice softened. "She's angry because I said no. She wanted me to fill in again. I didn't." Michael tilted his head slightly. "I don't think that's why," he said. She looked up. "People choose you without effort. Even when you were the girl with one shoe, people still wanted you around." Viana didn't interrupt. She just listened. "She feels like she has to perform to be above you because she's never felt equal," he said quietly. He reached across the table and took her hands. "I don't see her as a bad person," he added, "but I need you to know, you make spaces feel lighter, and whatever anyone else says about your past doesn't change that." Something in Viana loosened. "I care about you," Michael said, "and I don't want you shrinking, disappearing, or avoiding me because of someone else's insecurity." He smiled. "I don't care if you lose a shoe," he said softly. "I'll walk barefoot with you." She laughed, real laughter this time. Relieved, Michael kissed the back of her hand, and for the first time in days, Viana felt like she could breathe again. Viana got home glowing. Not loud happiness, not giddy excitement, the kind of calm joy that comes from being seen. Michael walked her to the door like he promised. "No missing shoes," he said with a smile. She laughed. He kissed her forehead, gentle, respectful, and left. Maybe this story was never about Venus versus Viana, or about which sister was prettier, louder, or more desirable. Maybe this story was about understanding that jealousy doesn't always come from the person who looks like they have less. Sometimes it comes from the person who seems to have everything. Insecurity doesn't always show up as envy or bitterness. Sometimes it shows up dressed as confidence, class, control, or concern. Someone can look more expensive than you, have more attention than you, and still envy something you carry effortlessly: your energy, your presence, your ease. Some people have to perform to be noticed. Others are simply noticed by existing. And that difference makes people uncomfortable. This story wasn't meant to show enemies. It was meant to show that even people you call your own, family, sisters, people closest to you, can quietly compete with you. Not loudly, not openly, but internally. Secret competition doesn't always speak. Sometimes it watches. Sometimes it keeps score. Sometimes it waits for moments to remind you of who you used to be, not to protect you, but to reduce you. This story is also a reminder to be mindful of what you share and who you share it with. Not everyone who listens is rooting for you, and not everyone who knows your history deserves access to your future. Some people don't weaponize your past immediately, they store it. Growth doesn't just change you, it changes how people treat you. When you stop needing approval, when you stop over-explaining, when you stop filling spaces you've outgrown, some people don't clap, they feel threatened. If you're the kind of person people gravitate toward, whether you're loud or quiet, single or taken, present or absent, don't apologize for it. That's not arrogance, that's presence, and presence can't be copied. Sometimes the real lesson isn't to fight back, it's to see clearly. And once you see clearly, you don't need to explain yourself anymore.
Not every wound needs confrontation. Distance is sometimes the boundary. I tell stories for people who notice the quiet things. If stories like this stay with you, you're already in the right place.